Good morning and welcome to Peace Out, where we are all learning together to peace out. And I have been having so many chances to practice. How about you guys? I mean, it's been crazy around here, but it's good crazy right this minute. I'm really excited about some stuff that's going on. This is really awesome. Anyway, I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're having a good morning. And I'm right at 8 o'clock. That rarely happens. I actually got started at 8. This is awesome. So, well, let's dive in. Now, yesterday we talked about how Jesus said, don't watch the birds and you realize they don't build farms and plant crops, yet God feeds them. And there's actually a scripture in Job that mentions that. Let me see if I can find it real fast. I wasn't going to mention it, but it talks about how he feeds the birds. And this is like in Job, right? Which I like Job anyway, because especially the last few chapters, because God describes creation, and that's just, I love reading that, right? And this is in the middle of that. It's actually the last verse of chapter 38 of Job, and it says, who provides food for the raven when its young ones cry to God and wander about for lack of food? God takes care of the birds too. And that's the whole point of what Jesus was saying was, I take care of the birds, I take care of the animals, I take care of nature. Nothing in nature worries about food. He gave them instinct, for one thing, to go look for it, right? But he's like, I take care of the birds, I'm going to take care of you too, is basically the point. So that was really interesting, but then that made me start thinking about some of the other birds in the Bible, and we're going to talk about a different bird every single day. We're going to talk about a passage that has something to do with the bird every single day, right? We ain't just talking about the birds. We've gone to the birds. Oh no, she lost it. We've gone to the birds. No. Anyway, so it made me start thinking though about so many of the stories and how birds were actually involved in different stories in scriptures. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to talk about it, but if you go all the way back to like Noah, he let a dove out of the window to see if the rain had receded, right? Had gone down in the end. Of course, the dove came back, and then a couple of days later, let out a dove and a raven, and they came back. And then the next time, another week, he let out a dove, and it didn't come back. So he knew that the waters had gone down. So they've been a part of stories, right? And today's story is going to be in 1 Kings 17. Now, I like 1 and 2 Kings because it's talking about Elisha and Elijah. And I love these stories. And we've talked about I believe this is the one where the widow, this is right before the story about the widow where she didn't have any food, and Elijah said, well, make me a cake first. And she goes, I just have enough for me and my son. But she obeyed, and then her flour and oil didn't go out all through the famine. God took care of her. Well, this is before that. Same famine, but before that, right? And so in the first part of chapter 17, it says Elisha stood before, I believe it's King Ahab. Yeah, Ahab was wicked. The funniest thing, it's not funny, but it's funny, because it says Ahab was a wicked, wicked man, right? And then he married Jezebel. And there's actually, I'd have to go back and look, but basically it says, as if he wasn't bad enough, then he married Jezebel on top of that, right? And she was a wicked woman. Man, what a match made in hell, right? They were quite the duo, and they wreaked havoc in Israel and in the region throughout. Kings will see that. And Elijah comes to Ahab and he goes, there's not going to be any rain until I say so, right? And now he's speaking from God, and God's going to withhold the rain. And so then it says the word of the Lord came to Elijah, who's just prophesied the drought. There's not going to be any rain. And we know it's going to be like for 3 years, I believe is how long it lasts. And anyway, he goes, get away from here and go eastward, hide by this brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. And it will be that you will drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. I was like, wow, how cool is this? Okay, so God tells Elijah to prophesy this drought. There's not going to be any rain. Now, we've had drought conditions in Oklahoma. Those of you who are watching from Oklahoma, this is the first year in, I think, over 10 years that we haven't had some area in drought because we've had so much rain this year. But we've been in a drought conditions, which just meant our water levels were down. But this was a drought. There was no, I can't even imagine if it didn't rain at all for 3 years. 3 weeks of no rain around here and things start looking dry and brown and fried, right? But no rain for 3 years because God said, no, no, there's no rain. I'm withholding rain from your region, right? But he tells Elijah, go to the brook. There's water there. I'm going to provide for you. In the middle of this really dry season, you get to sit by a brook in the woods. Whew, that would be awesome, right? You just get to sit by a brook in the wilderness and drink water, and you don't have to worry about food because I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. Now listen to this. So Elijah did exactly what God told him. He went and stayed at the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. Is that not just amazing? I mean, how did the ravens know where he was? Did he send up a flag to say, I'm over here, guys, I'm over here, right? God so meticulously designed this plot, this plan, that he told Elijah, go sit there, I got you covered. And then the birds, he goes to the birds, literally the birds, and says, you're going to feed them. Where did the birds get the bread? Did they carry, was it one raven or two ravens? Did one bring the bread, one bring the meat? Where did they get the meat? Was it already cooked? I got all these questions. Did they steal the bread from somebody else? Was it manna? Was it quail? And because we know in the children of Israel, God fed the children of Israel with quail and manna. Was this something like that, or was it raw? Was it cooked? But I don't know all the particulars, and we don't always know all the particulars. But what we do know in this story is that God did two things. He took care of his prophet, he took care of Elijah, and he commanded the birds. The birds didn't argue. They didn't say, I don't feel like going to the brook Cherith. What is his name? Cherith. I don't feel like going to the brook today. I don't want to drop this on Elijah today. Can I just eat the bread today? They just did what he said. And what I love about it is God commanded the ravens and they just obeyed. They just obeyed what God said. It was like this divinely orchestrated wow. And I don't know how long it stayed there. It just says after a while, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. So God had him in a safe place, and then the brook dried up because there was a lack of rain. But then that's when he goes to the widow that we talk about so much. And he says, make me a cake. And she's like, I don't have anything. So here's my point. God provided for these people in the middle of a very, very bad time, a very bad famine. There was no water, there was no rain, and if there's no rain, there's no crops. But God provided for Elijah, and he said, I commanded the ravens. Isn't that amazing that the ravens didn't argue like people do? Right? They didn't say, well, I don't even know where Elijah is today. I don't know. Where is he? Still over by the brook? Did he move to the other side? I mean, it was just such a simple plan. God said, I commanded the ravens, and then it says the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the afternoon, and he ate and he sat by the brook. That's a great camp out, right? The great camp out where God's just bringing food and supplied the water, told him where the water was. Other people could have found that brook, right? The other people could have gone there to get that water. It wasn't just for Elijah. The food was just for Elijah, but I love how God planned this whole thing and how he commanded the birds and they just did what he said. And they took care of Elijah during this time. There was this crazy, crazy time when there was no water and he had prophesied that there would be no rain at all. And yet God used the birds. What a unique thing. Would you think that, there's no way to think of that. I mean, I could give something to a bird and it's not going to know where to take it. Even if I put some bread out here, if it came and got a piece of bread, it wouldn't know where to take it. God divinely orchestrated this to take care of Elijah during this time. I love that God, and he knew exactly what Elijah needed, right? He knew when he needed it. Because sometimes I tell God, you don't have a good timetable. I need the so-and-so by Friday. You do know my Friday is very important to me, even though you're eternal, right? And sometimes I'm like, your time is messed up, God. But he knew exactly when to send them. He knew exactly how long to send them. And he took care of Elijah by the brook. God orchestrated all of this for one man. He is intimately acquainted with all our ways. Psalm 139 says, and if he will go to this extreme to take care of Elijah here, he is going to take care of us. and we can look at the birds of the air and the flowers of the field to remind ourselves God's got us covered too. That's when we can peace out. Peace out, you guys. Have a great day. See you again tomorrow.